I'm going to spotlight Chris just while you're there. That's Chris.
Hello.
He's the entertainment today.
Entertainment's the right word.
And we should see Carl there. Carl's the good-looking brains of the outfit.
Hiya.
And in one moment, I should be able to also add. Whoop. Won't be a second.
Just while Clark's doing the admin, and just while we're getting a bit warmed up, hey, look, in the chat, why don't you tell us where you're from and what's one thing that you might expect to get out of the session today? Because myself, Clark, and Graham will look after the chat section. So if you've got any questions that you want to put to Chris, we will keep an eye on the chat and keep that going. So Chris can focus on continuing to be entertaining, eh, Chris?
Yeah, I'll keep juggling the balls as they come to me. Yeah.
Yeah, you keep doing that. So in the chat, please tell us where you're from and what's one thing that you would like to understand or expect from this particular session.
London. Hello, London.
Nice.
Fun and
A
learning.
bit of fun and some learning. Well, that'll be good.
Yeah.
G'day, Brandon.
Came in Scotland.
And from
Arizona.
Indiana.
Sydney. Good morning, Linda. You should be at the gym this time of day. Hey, Seb. Hello, Jim. Arizona. Texas.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, Clark, I've just finished a workout at home, so there you go.
Hey, I'm loving some of the expectations, so a bit of fun and learning. Eager to hear about the overlaps Chris has experienced leveraging LSS with ToC. Some entertainment. I'm not sure what this one is about. Expectations are the parent of disappointment. Does that mean we shouldn't have any? Maybe I'm not sure. Because if we know roughly what the expectations are, we can also customize as we go through. Some more insights on clouds. Some fun with some hidden learning. I love that. There's always hidden learning in the fun. Something new. This is really, really good stuff. Really good stuff.
Oh, hello, Jim. Nice to see you there. We have a very nice wide variety, and I think we are now got most people come in. So I reckon we should be ready to start in just a little bit. So I'll be your host just to get things going, just to start with. And then we're really happy to take questions and stuff. But Chris has got some prepared material. He's got a really interesting story, and we've just heard it about an hour ago, and it's far more interesting than I'd actually expected. I had high expectations. It's did some really quite innovative stuff. So can I ask Graham? Would you mind making sure that people keep coming in? To the waiting room.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask everyone, I'm going to pop everyone on mute, and then I'm going to unmute Chris. And you're all familiar with this stuff now. The mute button is our friend. And so Carl, Graham, happy you guys come in when you want to, but I'll just kick us off now. So Chris, where are you?
Well, I'm actually about 15 minutes east of Cambridge here in the United Kingdom. I've been living in the United Kingdom for about 3 years, stationed out here in RAF Mildenhall. Yeah, really enjoying my time out here and meeting all the fine folks in England and being able to tour Europe and visit, at least pre-COVID, and hopefully a little bit after we get out of lockdown. But yeah, I've been really enjoying the time out here.
Cool. So we met, and I know you're going to show this picture. We met on the internet, which is so common these days. And because I saw on LinkedIn, you'd put up a picture where you were teaching drum buffer rope, and you just had a lovely little picture that demonstrated it with Lego. And I like that. And I remember thinking, I like someone who can just take something that seems really kind of confusing and complicated and just put it in a little friendly picture. But I do remember at the same time, you also got quite a few comments on there from people who didn't like the impurity. I don't think you lost anything truthful in it. You just and you didn't dumb it down. You just simplified it up, and so that's how we met. We started talking, and so tell me, you're in the Air Force, right? What's your job title?
Oh, well, I'm the Continuous Process Improvement Innovation Manager for a maintenance group. So I deal with process improvement, innovation, but mainly I deal with aircraft maintenance. That's where I got my start in the Air Force, was doing aircraft maintenance, and that's where my focus lies, is helping maintainers improve the way they do their business.
Yep, nice. And now you have you have a real, I think this is an awesome claim to fame, and I know you kind of are humble about it, but I don't think you should be, so I'll be unhumble on your behalf. You are a Lean Six Sigma LSS Master Black Belt. Can you tell everyone what that actually means?
Well, it just means that I've spent quite a bit of time helping people solve problems, and I enjoy mathematics a whole bunch. You're not quite to the level of a pure statistician, but you understand enough to be dangerous. But once you spend enough time working with processes, you begin teaching other people and mentoring other people, and really becoming a master at anything is ultimately giving more of what you know to other people and growing the next generation. So it's a humbling job. I enjoy it a lot more than actually getting into processes now. Is teaching people how to become practitioners themselves.
That's really cool. And I know the answer to this, but just I pretend I don't. Oh, so how many Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belts are there in the Air Force?
There's about 21 of them, but there's only one enlisted.
Who's that, Chris?
That's me. Yeah.
So you started, not bottom up, I know, but you started, you worked your way up, and then over the many years you've got to that state. Okay, so now, if I heard that, some people in the ToC community might now be seeing you as the enemy. I don't think many people these days, because Lean Six Sigma, ToC, you're using them all together really nicely, is my impression.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the way I was taught was that there's a harmonious blend to all of them. If you try to stick in one camp, or you just stay in one area, you're going to get really good, but at Six Sigma. But if you ever try to go into anything that doesn't have making widgets at the millions of levels, then you might have a problem. You don't have enough data, not enough math to do it. And if you look at a pure Toyota production system approach, they level load, the Muda, the Mura, and the Muri, and Eli Goldratt honed in on that during his time studying the Toyota production system. He even wrote Standing on the Shoulders of Giants, where he referenced Taishi Shiono's work and being instrumental in what he did. So if you rule one out and you only try to play in one camp, you're really missing out on an opportunity to blend the best of all of these methodologies. So we do that pretty well.
Love that. Right. How about we pop into your little story, and how about I get rid of our not ugly faces, but I'll get rid of our faces and just let you have the stage and just walk through. We may pop in and gush a little bit at how awesome the stuff you've done is. Sorry, just give me one moment here. But you should be able to share screen now, I think.
Yep. All right. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you a little bit of a background of why I was asked to come here and put this this podcast on. And it's because my team was one of the finalists in the Air Force Spark Tank. Now, a little bit of context, if you've ever watched the television show, The Shark Tank, or if you haven't, it's a panel of business people. Mark Cuban and some other folks will listen to up and coming business people pitch their idea. And if the idea is good enough, they'll offer them some money or help them out. And the Air Force thought, well, this is a pretty clever way of getting ideas from the ground up and then pitching these ideas to the senior leaders of the Air Force. And this contest is ran every year. There's no cash prize at the end. Yeah, similar to Dragon's Den. Yeah, exactly. So our team worked on a project that dealt with communication and hearing protection, which was very common to maintainers, having to protect your hearing from extreme noises and at the same time being able to communicate. And we worked on this project for a year, and we began working our way up the different levels of the Spark Tank competition, and kind of iterating on the project until the point we got to the final stage. There were 5 finalists. All projects were pitched to senior leadership in the Air Force. So I'm going to show you the video that we used to pitch. I'm again, a little bit of context is it's dealing with hearing protection. It's dealing with communication. And then we're going to roll in and talk about how we developed our pitch using theory constraints and more importantly, the evaporating cloud. But we had a little twist to how our cloud was developed. And then we're going to watch the video again after I go through it to see if you can pick up on it, because we didn't beat people over the head with theory constraints. We didn't try to explain the cloud. We just pitched it the way we felt that it needed to be pitched, explaining it to some high level people so that they can recognize the pain. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'll also share the link to the YouTube video. It's out for public consumption. So by all means, if you want to watch the 1.5-hour long full Spark Tank, go right ahead. Share my sound, maximize that. And just for a little bit of context, the people that you're seeing on the screen are the senior leaders in the Air Force. We even have the Secretary of the Air Force, Secretary Roth, General Brown, Chief Bass. These are all the senior leaders, and they're acting as the Spark Tank panel. So I'm going to hit play and enjoy the show.
Really great idea. Brew?
Judges and Anthony, you can now turn off your cameras and mics again. Next to the Spark Tank, all the way from the UK, we have the in-the-ear bone conduction communication team. This team set out on the noble cause of saving airmen's hearing and the root of the problem. Chris, over to you.
Hey, thanks everyone. This is Master Sergeant Pettingill, and with me I have Tech Sergeant Anderson. And again, we're coming all the way from the United Kingdom in the legendary Bloody 100th. Go ahead and roll the tape.
Every day, airmen and guardians strive to get the mission done. For aircraft maintainers, the mission creates loud noises that can damage our hearing, and so we have to protect ourselves. We do this by utilizing the same equipment that we have used since the 80s, foam plugs and over-the-ear hearing protection. However, this causes an issue. In order to be able to complete the mission, we have to be able to communicate, which brings us to the problem, the maintenance dilemma. Do the aircraft maintainers choose to prioritize their hearing and slow down the mission, possibly losing critical seconds to make a decision, or do they execute the mission quickly, but at the expense of their hearing? In-the-ear bone conduction technology is the solution to this problem. This technology provides the hearing protection required while also allowing the user to hear and communicate with anyone around them. Additionally, we can stop putting our airmen and guardians' hearing at risk while in a chemical warfare environment, because the hearing protection can easily go under the chemical suits we are required to wear. But wait, there's more. This equipment isn't only for aircraft maintainers. It can be utilized by pilots, security forces, EOD, and many, many more.
Over the past 1.5 years, our team has worked with industry leaders in bone conduction technology to establish a proof of concept. Our efforts have field tested and validated our solutions. We have collected a lot of feedback from maintainers and established a cadre of subject matter experts across maintenance and medical career fields. We have made it to Spark Tank, but we have not come alone. Along with us comes thousands of maintainers and millions of veterans who understand the long-term importance of this project. In order to hear them, we're asking for your help. We would like to stand up a program of record. This will help spread future spending needs out over time as the project matures, as well as help smoothly scale this project across the entire Air and Space Force. This is a huge effort with a huge impact and will require planning and strategy in order to be successful.
What's going on, man? You got called out for a light bulb or something? Yeah, they just said they have a light out.
So what happens if we do nothing? Well, sadly, life will continue, but the mission won't get any quieter.
The painful choice will be the only choice.
Poor communication will continue to muffle the mission.
And a lifetime of silence will carry with us long after our career is over.
In the end, there's only one question that really needs to be answered. Can you hear us now?
All right. So with that, was the ultimately the pitch. The pitch was made up of defining a problem, presenting a solution, making a formal ask, and then presenting them with a dilemma, their own dilemma of doing nothing at all. It's like, all right, well, you can either agree with this or you cannot agree with this, and if you don't agree with this, then these are the consequences of it. And we had many different iterations of it, but it ultimately came down to explaining this in the problem in the form of a dilemma, and we flushed that dilemma out by using the evaporating cloud. So with that, I'm going to bring up my slides and share with you our thought process in moving forward and how we kind of helped develop the pitch. We knew all of the elements because we were maintainers, so we knew the pros and the cons of each side of the argument. It was about putting it in a way that other people could understand it. And before I do that, Clark, do you want to open up for any questions? You want me to move right into my slides?
I'd say just go for it.
Okay.
Got some nice comments there. Great pitch, brilliant. Someone would like a link to the video.
Yep.
Yeah, so I say keep going. You're on a roll.
All right.
So it's in the microphone. I was wondering. I was like, I've put these things in my ears on HH-60s in Afghanistan. This is just the same exact stuff. You guys are really just asking to get what somebody else has, or is there something new or different about this specifically?
I think.
Yes, Chief.
Hang on. Oh, I'm sorry. I was running the video in the background. Sorry about that. All right. So, So this is going to be talking about strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats, and the cloud, or SWOT in the cloud. And for most people, you're probably familiar with SWOT analysis, but you might not need. You might not be able to correlate the two together because it's not taught in conjunction with each other. But today I'm gonna share with you that there is a correlation between SWOT analysis and risk and the cloud. So I'm gonna jump right into it. So SWOT analysis is taught in many different schools of thought. The first time I heard of SWOT analysis was in process improvement world, used as a brainstorming methodology. You've got strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I heard about SWOT analysis again later on in strategy development when I went to strategy development school. And then later on, when I became a project manager, I heard of SWOT again. And each time I heard these, the SWOT analysis taught, it was taught in a little different way, but with pretty much the same concept. But I want to focus today your attention on the bottom, the opportunities and the threats, because both of an opportunity and a threat are both considered risks. It's a good risk and a bad risk, and the best way to give a good analogy of that is spinning a roulette wheel. Spinning the wheel, you can land on red or you can land on black. You could win or you could lose. So both of them are both a good and a bad. So opportunities and threats are both considered risk, and this helps you build a cloud if you think of it in these terms. We have the traditional cloud approach, which, as you see on the right-hand side, is Eli's version, which you have the D and the D prime, or your true conflict, your requirements, and then your mutual objectives. And then Clark has flipped that on its head, which is the method I actually enjoy as well, because it to me, it logically makes sense to go from bottom to top versus right to left. I don't know why he didn't do, right to left instead of left to right. But whatever. I like the top to bottom approach, the way Clark explains it. I modeled the way I view it similar to that. But you can use the same method however it makes the most sense to you. But I just wanted to show Clark's cloud because it'll transition well into the next slide. All right. So this is ultimately how I form the cloud using SWOT analysis. You have your strengths, which is ultimately your prime directive, your weaknesses and the opposite of your weaknesses, or we'll call it weakness and weakness prime, or W and W prime, whatever. But your opportunities are always going to be the positive benefits from each side of the argument. If we do one, the good risk is this. If we do the other, the good risk is going to be that. And usually on the naysayers will point out the threats to the other side. So if I look over here and I see my weakness on this side, they will typically point out the threats to the other side, and vice versa. And that's kind of how we look at the cloud, or at least how I look at the cloud, and how I can explain it to you all here today. So let's go back to the problem and how we formulated developed our cloud from the pitch. Well, first you could either follow the rules, and the opportunity of following the rules is that you're going to be protected from the dangerous noise. You have to protect your hearing at all times. And the strengths, or the prime directive, is that you need to protect your hearing in order to execute the mission properly. But the naysayers, and we ourselves, the naysayers, because we're critical upon ourselves, would say, if we follow the rules, then we slow down the mission. And you say, well, what does that even mean? Well, if you're in a loud environment and you're trying to communicate with someone and you have hearing protection on, you not only can not hear them, but they're having to scream through the noise to get through to you. So you have to leave the environment to communicate, to make a phone call, to call over the radio, to talk with your fellow maintainers. And you don't always have the luxury of leaving the area. You might have to be doing maintenance, and you don't have time for that. So the other side of the argument would be, well, don't follow the rules. And you'd say, well, what's the benefit of not following the rules? Well, you'd have unhindered communication. I can communicate, and I need to be able to communicate in order to execute the mission. And again, the naysayers will say, well, if you don't follow the rules, then you're in the long run going to have hearing loss, and that's true as well. So our cloud is pretty much developed just by using some risk assessments. I know I have a pretty strong logic, because if I can tell the contradictions are there, meaning if I follow the rules, I will not have unhindered communication. And if I do not follow the rules, I will be protected. So these contradictions, when you read cross the grain, follow through. So our solution was, well, how do I protect ourselves from noise and have unhindered communication? How do I not slow down the mission and prevent hearing loss? Well, we couldn't do it using the methods that we already were used to, because it was in the ear hearing protection and over the ear headsets. And one of them did one good and the other did the other good, but both of them didn't do either one both very well. So when we started researching different technologies, we found that bone conduction was being used in the private sector to solve the same problem. Train conductors, mining operations, they were using this similar technology. All we had to do is figure out a way to make it work on the aircraft. And, once we got over that constraint, the rest was downhill from there. And it was just a matter of convincing leadership to buy into our idea. So Clark, I want you to jump back in before we move into the next example. Do you want to open up some questions, or do you want to play the video again and see if the cloud is a little more, if you can recognize it a little easier?
Right. Okay. Let me just 1 second as I figure out how to find myself again.
Clark
There
is
we go.
doing that. Well, Clark is doing that, Chris. I really love your connection between SWOT and the conflict cloud. It's really cool. And one of the things that really jumps out for me, which I hadn't really thought about before, is how the assumptions are the threats.
Yep.
That's pretty cool, because when you think about assumptions, it's the erroneous assumptions that always cause the problems. So I really, really like that connection. The assumption are the threats. And so when you look at the SWOT, and I see the objective in the green, and I see the opportunities or the needs in the blue, and I see the weaknesses or the undesirable effects or the conflicting wants. I love that the yellow W is for wants.
Yeah, your weaknesses. Yeah.
I really love that connection. And then the threats, that's the thing that's really jumping out for me. It's kind of cool. Like, the threats are the assumptions that we hold. That's right. That's a massive insight for me, and I really appreciate it.
And that's right. And usually that's where the arguments usually lie. And for most people trying to develop clouds, they usually pit one threat against the other threat. That can get kind of hard, because that's really falling into your camp mentality. Well, I'm really going to stand behind my big thing that I can throw at you. We're going to slow down the mission. That was what people would say. Well, were there reasons for relaxing their hearing protection? And I want to put a disclaimer. The guys weren't just actively going out there and saying to heck with the rules. That wasn't the case at all. It's actually these microscopic decisions that are made, that just the moments in time that you relax your hearing protection, that adds up over time. And as we learned a lot more about hearing protections, you find that people are willing to make risks, personal risks, at their own safety, if they don't perceive the threat to be that bad. And one of our hearing protection experts put it like this. They said, if sound waves felt like heat waves, you wouldn't have this problem, because people would not get close to the fire. They exactly how close you can get to a flame before you pull your hand back, but you don't know how close you need to be or how long you can stay in a noisy environment before you start having hearing loss, because it doesn't hurt the same way. So humans, this really dived into a human dynamic where people were accepting their personal risk for the sake of the mission, not realizing that in 20 years, all of those microscopic decisions would add up over time, and really weigh on you.
So that's really, really interesting. Yeah. Sorry. That's what I'm interested in there. The bit that jumps out at me is how this lingers. This is not a new problem, but it was just put up with.
Yes.
Yeah. For a long time.
Yeah, it was follow the rules. So you would tell someone to follow the rules and get the mission done in the same breath. You'd say, go get the mission done, but follow the rules. And what you're really telling them is go follow the rules and go break the rules in the same breath, without telling them that. And all of the senior leaders really gravitated to this, because they were all able to look back in their past and say, yeah, I remember being in that position. I remember the risks I took. And then you go out and ask the guys, well, are you following the rules? And they say, oh, of course we're following the rules. Yeah, we're following the rules. But then when you really begin to ask them, and you give them this scenario, you say, yeah, that actually happens more often than you would think. And
it's really interesting that it just lingers and it lives in the background, and we put up with it. And I think that's one of the things with conflicts or dilemmas. Often they actually become invisible. So what you've done here, and we'll go back to the video in a moment, it's been a really nice way of lifting it up, and it just makes it obvious that it's actually a problem. And I love the way you ended it. Your communication's brilliant. Can you hear us? So that was really clever. Can I check? Tim, I think I saw Tim raise his hand there. Did you want to ask a question, Tim? I'm just trying to see. No, I think Tim's lowered his hand. Oh, here we go. Tim, my question is this. So, yeah, come on, go for it, Tim.
Hi.
Hi, Tim. How are you?
Can everybody hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
go ahead.
Hi. Thank you so much for your presentation. Really giving you ideas. Everybody, I'm sure, feels the same. Well, my question is, your approach, which I hugely admire, is it a creative thinking process? And I'm trying to draw a parallel with, for example, team.
Are we having a connection issue, or is that my connection?
We are having a connection issue.
I think we lost Tim.
So Tim, in the comments, he said, my question is process by definition. Creative thinking
Google
could be
7
solved by team formation. So
the
I'm
formation of the
wondering
team where
whether
you
the
get a
question...
balance of.
Yeah, so Tim, obviously we're having trouble with the sound, but I'm wondering, I think, and I'm going to make an assumption, Tim. Is there a connection between the process and creative thinking and the team formation? That's what's actually in the chat. So I know, Chris, that you have talked about group dynamics and that you've got some really nice background in group dynamics and systems and things like that. So what kind of impact did using, as well as a communication tool, obviously, in the Spark Tank, but what sort of impact did using these problem-solving processes have in terms of bringing people together to solve a tricky problem?
Right. Yeah. A lot of times when it comes to process improvement, there are a lot of ideas on how to go about solving a particular problem. And that's usually in the group team dynamics where things begin to break down. The cloud helps you separate people into camps and allow them to make their arguments without fighting each other, but fighting towards the common objective. And you pretty much say, don't hold back your threats here. Don't hold back. But we're gonna write them out and use this as a constructive tool to get past it. So if you leave arguments and conflicts just across the table with people yelling at each other, and you don't write it down, you don't draw out your cloud, it just becomes personalities arguing with each other. You're going to just butt heads all the time. When you bring a cloud and you write the cloud down, I like to think of it as you're bringing something from inside your head or in the imagination world into reality. And now your team can begin to talk about what's on the board, and now it's real, and it becomes something that you can then work off of. Now, did our team write out the cloud from the beginning? Did this help us solve the problem? No, we knew what the problem was. We knew all aspects of the cloud just by living life. It wasn't until we had to explain our dilemma to someone who had no idea what our problem was that we really then wrote out the cloud and said, hey, this is how we're going to message it. This is the reality in the bottom line up front. You know, if I had to summarize what's going on, here's what's going on. And
do you want to show the video then? Because I think can I just stop it, pause for a moment, and just before you show the video and just sum up. So there's a long period where you know this is going on many years, and then you guys go, this is a problem, we want to do something about it, and you don't need to draw a cloud. You don't need to draw it down. You get stuff out, you talk to people, and you talk about it. But then you get to a point where you go, now we need to communicate it. And this is why I love this so much. And you need to say to, I presume everyone that was watching that knows how important those people are in your world that were on that grid view. They're really right at the top of the Air Force there. And you're going to them saying, we would like some money, effectively, I think. Could you spend some money to look after your employees? But here's a really good reason. It'll be good for the mission. So I think that's when you started. And as people watch the video again, you'll see it with different eyes. Can I just point out some things that I saw to look out for? One, the word dilemma. So Chris and his colleagues have actually put in the video that they've named this as someone's dilemma. Watch out for that. And then I think you'll hear the language on the one hand. I think you'll hear on the other hand. And then I'm pretty sure near the end of it that you'll mention our friend Bob, best of both worlds, B-O-B. I think I heard those words where you want to get the best of both worlds, or maybe that's just my imagination. But listen out, Chris and his colleagues have visually shown the dilemma. They've then named it, and they've walked through the process, but they haven't gone on and on and on about the actual tool. They've just presented it, but they've used the cloud to help structure it. And then they've had a call to action at the end of it, which is, can you hear us? Which is a brilliant play on words. And it's and I think it's probably time I stopped talking and you went back and shared your screen.
Sure. Yeah. All right. So again, put yourself in the, at a concert, a really loud concert, and you're wanting to enjoy the music, but someone calls you on the phone and it's an emergency. Well, you need to be able to communicate. At the same time, you're wearing hearing protection because you're standing right next to the speaker. And that's just kind of the way you can relate our dilemma, that if you were in a concert. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. There we go.
Next to the spark tank, all the way from the UK, we have the in-the-ear bone conduction communication team. This team set out on the noble cause of saving airmen's hearing and the root of the problem. Chris, over to you.
Hey, thanks everyone. This is Master Sergeant Pettingill, and with me I have Tech Sergeant Anderson. And again, we're coming all the way from the United Kingdom in the legendary Bloody 100th. Go ahead and roll the tape.
Every day, airmen and guardians strive to get the mission done. For aircraft maintainers, the mission creates loud noises that can damage our hearing, and so we have to protect ourselves. We do this by utilizing the same equipment that we have used since the 80s, foam plugs and over-the-ear hearing protection. However, this causes an issue. In order to be able to complete the mission, we have to be able to communicate, which brings us to the problem, the maintenance dilemma. Do the aircraft maintainers choose to prioritize their hearing and slow down the mission, possibly losing critical seconds to make a decision, or do they execute the mission quickly, but at the expense of their hearing? In-the-ear bone conduction technology is the solution to this problem. This technology provides the hearing protection required while also allowing the user to hear and communicate with anyone around them. Additionally, we can stop putting our airmen and guardians' hearing at risk while in a chemical warfare environment, because the hearing protection can easily go under the chemical suits we are required to wear. But wait, there's more. This equipment isn't only for aircraft maintainers. It can be utilized by pilots, security forces, EOD, and many, many more.
Over the past year and a half, our team has worked with industry leaders in bone conduction technology to establish a proof of concept. Our efforts have field tested and validated our solution. We have collected a lot of feedback from maintainers and established a cadre of subject matter experts across maintenance and medical career fields. We have made it to Spark Tank, but we have not come alone. Along with us comes thousands of maintainers and millions of veterans who understand the long-term importance of this project. In order to hear them, we're asking for your help. We would like to stand up a program of record. This will help spread future spending needs out over time as the project matures, as well as help smoothly scale this project across the entire Air and Space Force. This is a huge effort with a huge impact and will require planning and strategy in order to be successful.
they just have to have a light out.
So what happens if we do nothing? Well, sadly, life will continue, but the mission won't get any quieter.
The painful choice will be the only choice.
Poor communication will continue to muffle the mission.
And a lifetime of silence will carry with us long after our career is over.
In the end, there's only one question that really needs to be answered. Can you hear us now?
Right. Lovely job, Chris.
One of the things I also liked is that you said this wasn't a complete solution. There's still the rollout to be done. There's still a whole lot of obstacles to overcome in there, but you've got the primary thing there that you need to do.
Right, right. Yeah, we never claimed that it was a pure. There's a lot of cultural barriers to jump over when it comes to change. There's a whole another lecture on change management if you want to jump into that, because we're dealing with a time-tested technique. And I've seen some of the comments in sign language. Aircraft maintenance actually has its own sign language, marshalling hand signals, but there's only about 30 or 40 different signals. So, and it's really just communicating with a ground crew with the pilot, and it's usually for moving the aircraft from place to place, letting them know under certain conditions how to turn the aircraft. But when you have to communicate with your fellow maintainers, or you have to transmit a signal or a radio call, well, now you can't do that because the sign language doesn't translate over the airwaves. But no, that is something that it is taught to for maintainers, is using hand signals as a last ditch effort, or when you're off of communications, when you're calm out. So yeah, so now that you've seen the video before, you understood how we developed our pitch and how we came up with cloud. It makes it a little easier about seeing and articulating a dilemma up the chain, and it went over very well. Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to get all the things we asked for moving out.
Yep. Can I butt in there? And I know you got a personal cloud, but I'm wondering maybe if we come back to that at another time. I'm thinking of timing. We've got about 15 minutes, so it's nice to sort of wrap up, but then maybe carry on with a few questions afterwards. I just wonder maybe if we go to a Q&A kind of thing now. Has anyone got anything they would like to ask? I want to ask David if he'd show us more pictures of his kitchen, because it looks really cool.
Can I make a suggestion in terms of process? If you have a question, please put it in the chat, because I don't like the idea of actually trying to get the voices and all the audio working right. But if you put the questions in the chat, then Clark, Graham, and myself can actually kind of facilitate that for you, Chris. There's
sure.
So we've got a question here. So do you really SW0T ? I think we might need a little bit more clarity. I'm not sure what exactly that means.
I mean, strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threat. Are you using SWOT? Absolutely, yes. SWOT analysis is used in many different aspects of process improvement. It's primarily a brainstorming technique used by a team to flesh out kind of ideas before you get into things. Like you really flesh out some assumptions and some things you want to do. If you're dealing with strategy development, SWOT is a technique that leadership uses to establish a true north, or how they're trying to move the organization or the company from where they're currently at to where they are in the future. In project management, SWOT analysis is used in the risk assessment planning phase. So you have your planning phase, your risk plan. SWOT is used during that particular aspect. So SWOT's used all over the place, and I guess what I'm trying to get at is you can use SWOT analysis to help you build a cloud by just focusing on the opportunity risks and the threat risks, and just, hey, call your assumption a risk. Call your opportunity a risk.
I really love that you've gone SWOT analysis plus ToC plus cloud, because to actually enhance both, which I think is really, really cool. I've never seen it actually put like that. So I'm definitely going to be using that myself personally, because SWOT is pretty well known, but cloud's a little less well known. And I really love the way that you've made that connection there.
Actually, I think Jim Heffernan there. Hello, Jim in Dublin. You've made a really good point there. I'll just read it out. I really like the idea of linking the SWOT to the cloud. I've seen many SWOTs end up in documents and go no further. You know, kind of like the risk register, or we've registered them. So let's just get on with things. The cloud brings the SWOT towards specific actions. So it feels like it's added to the SWOT, but the SWOT's added to the cloud. It's a really good mix. Ben has asked, have you used SWOT clouds when the dilemmas are less severe? Or do you need to be more quantitative threats and opportunities?
No. I think that's a good segue to the next cloud.
Why don't we do that then?
Okay. So
Cool.
I'm glad you brought that up, because you can use SWOT analysis, and you can also use the cloud to address just life. I mean, this isn't unique to just a major process or a big organization or a big complex dilemma. So I'm going to get back to sharing my screen, and then we're gonna move on to my next story. So I want to give you guys, this was about the summer of last year. We were in the thick of COVID lockdown here in England, and the school systems said, hey, parents, you have to make a decision on whether your children are going to go to virtual school, or they are going to stay, or they're going to come back to traditional brick and mortar schools. And we have a daughter who's a senior. It was her last year in her, before going off to college. And we had a problem because we had a lot of unknowns, and the school system wasn't giving us a lot of answers. And we really didn't know what to do, because it was pitting us against two different uncomfortable scenarios. So I'm gonna flesh out our cloud, and I'll walk you through how we came up with it. So on one hand, we could send our daughter to virtual school and keep her home, meaning we would, the opportunity risk is that there would be a low COVID risk because she's staying home, we're watching her, and the strengths, or the goal is to have a happy and healthy family. That's why we wanted her to stay home. But there was risks associated, negative risk, and that was we would have a very depressed teenager, because we saw how her attitude and her mental state was at the end of the previous year when they went into lockdown, and we didn't want to replicate that. So we knew that was going to happen. It was going to be her final year. So that was our strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats on one hand of the cloud. When we did the other side, we said, well, then we can go to traditional school, meaning going back to the brick and mortar school. And the opportunity there is that she would be able to experience her normal teenage social life with all of her other friends. And the benefit of that is the same, a happy and healthy family. But the risk of that is that there's a high COVID risk, because we didn't know how well the school was going to be handling the crisis. So that was our cloud. And this really created a struggle between my wife and I, because we didn't know what to do. There were some tearful discussions and some frustrations, and the hard-handed side of me said, the family has to be healthy. You know, she'll get over the depression. It's just a year, you know, keep her home. But the soft side of me said, no, I want my daughter to experience this. But what we really found out is we were really arguing over unknowns, the threats. How much risk was her going to school going to be? We didn't know that. So what we did is we came up with an idea and asked her if she would be willing to, for the first week, come home from school and then just get directly into her evening clothes and take a shower. And then while we were hanging out in the living room, just for a week, wear a mask. and just so that she could give us an idea of what was going on at the school. And we said, okay, if you can protect yourself from us, or we can protect ourselves from you, then that might be a good compromise. And just like that, the cloud was evaporated. We didn't have to, it was no longer about whether she was going to go to traditional school or virtual school. It was really about how we were going to get past the two big threats. And one we knew, the other we didn't know. And after about a week, we realized, hey, the conflict was gone because the school was doing the right thing. There wasn't an increase in a COVID outbreak in the schools, and we relaxed a little bit and went back to normal life. So clouds can be used on many things, not just complex processors or fancy hearing protection. So Clark.
There you go. I would say though, Chris, that was at least as important within the scope of your family as the hearing loss risk is to many families. So that's really that's lovely. It's just so actually just a question on that. So what made the difference here? So you got the cloud there. What was it effectively? Something changed. What made the difference?
So what really made the difference is my wife and I not being in two different camps. We weren't arguing over what to do, left or right or wrong, virtual school, traditional school. It was about writing out the cloud, taking it from an imaginary state, putting it into the reality state, actually writing it down, and then solving what our assumptions were. We had some huge assumptions when it came to those threats. And I would say the left-hand side was less assumptions because we had already experienced that side of our daughter at the previous year. It was really the right side assumption that we didn't know. And we had to figure out, and once we were able to get over that, it was like a weight lifted off of our shoulders. The moment we thought of that idea, we go, that's not crazy. She already takes a shower every day when she comes home from school anyhow, because that's just how she acts. Is it that hard to ask her to wear a mask while she's in the living room with us? And she was like, no, absolutely. And she compromised on that end. And after a week, it was like, wow, they really are handling the rules very well. That assumption was gone, and our cloud had evaporated, and we were back to being a happy family again. No more,
that was probably very stressful. I can imagine. I mean, everyone, people around the world have been very stressful, but most people, I guess, have just sort of, I'm not going to say sucked it up. They're just going to just live with the stress and then waited to see what happened, or they've taken one side and the other. You actually effectively conducted an experiment, I think, to find out. You're experimenting on your teenage daughter. Okay.
We like to say that we followed all the local laws and guidelines only within our home.
That's nice. Yeah, that's really good. That's a nice way of putting it. I like that. Yeah. Okay.
I think to me, that's one of the real key things. And you brought it up earlier, Chris, that by getting the cloud down on paper, instead of you against me or you against your wife or whatever it happens to be, it's us against the problem. We're suddenly all on the same side trying to figure out how to beat this. We understand the other side's argument, they understand our side, and we've now got something we can work with.
If you look at the way our not to get super philosophical, but if you look at the way our society lives and just the way things have been going in life, it's really a one camp must win versus another camp must win. Yeah. And one camp wins by the other camp losing. And compromise is such an ugly word, because compromising is meaning I'm watering down what I want and you're watering down what you want. We're going to meet in the middle, and neither one of us are really going to be happy. We're just not going to be as unhappy as we were before. And I never liked the idea that compromise is the only way to evaporate or solve a conflict. It's not a sum of win-win or one side must win. Every side can win if you bring the assumptions out into the open and attack the assumptions, because everyone can win.
As Brendan has put in here, best part of the cloud, it rejects the premise that we can't get the best of both conflicting scenarios. It's not a zero-sum game.
That's right. Amen.
In terms of process, how about we formally wind down now, just to make it for the hour, and then we'll just carry on with just a bit more chit chat afterwards. But Chris, that has been really an eye opener. I know there's just so many bits to take from this, but for me, the bit I love most is how you used the cloud to communicate a really important, but almost invisibly important problem to a bunch of people. But you didn't need to go all. You just did it with a video and words, but the cloud as a sort of a stepping stone helped you describe that. So I found that really useful. There's been a whole lot of really great comments here, and we can come back to the conversation in a second. Just to wrap up, we now come to, in terms of us doing more chats like this, we now come to the awkward period of the year where we all swap daylight savings differently. So over the next couple of weeks, we're going to have to figure out, because we really enjoy doing these. And Chris agreed earlier, he didn't, but he would have if I'd asked him to come back and do some more on this and other stuff at another time. And I think, I'm not sure, but I think Alan Barnard, sitting in the background, would also be up for coming and showing us the tool that he and his company use for doing clouds, and it actually includes a bit of the SWOT stuff. I'm just checking to see if no, Alan hasn't quite agreed yet, but I'm sure he will.
I think that was an invitation.
Alan's Harmony Decision Maker app does clouds. It's really clever stuff. So I'm hoping Alan will reply with a definitely yes. I'll come and tell you guys more about it. And just coming up, so we have a few more things coming up. We also have Ian Larson, who works at WiseTech in Sydney in Australia. They have hundreds and hundreds of people doing ToC on the ground in the real world. Some of them are actually watching here, and Ian is going to come and tell us about what they do. Really big, wonderful success story there. And we're just going to try and keep bringing you more interesting, useful stuff. Okay. Graham, would you wrap up rather than me keep rabbiting on, and then we'll pretend to stop, and then we'll just carry on?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, on behalf of everyone, thanks very much, Chris. Found that fascinating that you've used the ToC tools in combination with the SWOT. Some of the takeaways for me is that there's risk in both the opportunities and the threats, and seeing those threats as assumptions, the way you've built your cloud, absolutely fascinating. So congratulations on winning the Spark Tank award. How much money are they going to give you?
Well, we were all winners, so I think all of the nominees were winners. There was one trophy. We did not take the trophy, unfortunately, but that those were reasons for other reasons. But the other team did a great job as well. But no, we didn't advocate for money.
Sorry, I suppose my question is, what sort of budget were you asking these senior people for to roll this thing out?
We didn't ask for a budget. We asked for senior level advocacy to begin researching this technology on a higher level. We did our groundwork at the unit level. We wanted the senior level advocacy to look at this more holistically for Air Force wide solution. So,
okay, and you've given them the tools to take it out to other people as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So, thank you very much. Been an absolute pleasure having you here today.
Thank you very much. And again, thank you all for giving me a little bit of your time. I hope it's been valuable. Thank you.
So that's
just something nice.
If you want to head off, do so. We are going to stick around for a little bit longer. If you've got some more questions, please chuck them in the comments. And if you could, just on your way out, just go, what's one highlight for you as you leave, just what's one highlight for you in the comments. But thanks very much. Yeah, if you have to go, we'll catch you later at the next one, hopefully.
Cool. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much for coming along. This is our only way we get to see people that don't live in New Zealand, by the way.
Yeah, it's a great networking opportunity afterwards, just to kind of hang out and see what else is going on in the world.
Yeah.
Oh, I see Alan's just dropped something in the comments, probably worth having a quick read. There's a lot of comments coming through, but he's talked about SWOT in the Procon cloud.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Middle two boxes of the change versus no change. Yeah. You really pit one versus the other. And developing a cloud, you really want to make your D and your D prime pure opposites of one another, not a warm versus lukewarm or a cold versus super cold. It's always the polar opposite on your D and your D primes. And where most people will argue is over the assumptions or the threats. They'll say, well, my threat is this and your threat is that, and they'll try to bump those two things together. And you got to pull them aside and say, okay, what are we really talking about here? We're really
love that. That was a really cool insight for me. I use another technique when I explain that. I say the opposite to black is not white. The opposite to black is any other color other than black.
That's right.
So it's the opposite of black is not black, and then that opens possibility up significantly more. But I really like your connection with the threats, and there's another connection for me around the threats and the assumptions, and it actually kind of fits in nicely with something called interest-based problem solving, which is about discovering the interests of the person who is trying to remove their threat. I'm trying to piece that together in my mind. Say that in a different way. Okay, it's a bit like the threat. I want to get rid of the threat, and my interest or my need to get rid of the threat is this.
Yeah.
So I want to protect my ears. Sorry, I want to protect my ears is the want. Sorry. Hang on. Following the rules is the want, but I want to protect my ears is the need. So the need, the interest, it's about actually being able to understand all of the stakeholder interests.
Right.
Probably a little bit of a stretch there, but I like how it just kind of focuses in on the threats as the assumptions and the beliefs about how to get what we want.
Right. Well, opportunities aren't guaranteed either. So, I mean, when you say, hey, I have an opportunity, you're spinning that roulette wheel. You do not know that your opportunity is going to guaranteed on red. It can land on black. So when you think of opportunities, there's risk involved in opportunities as well. And sometimes you are assuming that the opportunity is going to be the goodness, that I'm making that assumption as well. So it's really more of like a positive thinking assumption versus a negative thinking. And you kind of let the other side, make the point against you. Have an argument with your spouse. They'll be really quick to tell you where you're wrong. You just write that down. All right. I got the good things, but they'll quickly tell me they're wrong. So
I sneak in here. Button, I got a question here from Linda. Linda, it's gone. Here we go. Actually, Linda said, very impressive use of the tools thinking and such a great pitch for significant life-changing issue. And then she asked a question, but it's all scrolled away. Hang on.
Is it this one? Here is my question from earlier. There must be a lot.
Yes, that's the one. Could you read it?
There must be a lot of, but if we did that assumptions, how do you narrow it down to the big one? How do you get to your T1 or T2?
Right. So when you do typical SWOT analysis, there's a lot of them. You will have a lot of strengths, a lot of weaknesses, a lot of opportunities, and a lot of threats. Usually it's like, again, you go back to the brainstorming technique. You file it down to the one that's going to make the most impact. So some of them, the biggest gain versus the biggest loss, and say, because those are your extremes. Everything else is clouded in the middle somewhere. So if I can say, well, if this is the extreme hearing loss, then everything under that is not as extreme. So, okay, well, this is the worst case scenario, and this is the best case scenario. But you could do it another way. You can say, hey, we're doing SWOT analysis on just our financial side. Okay, we'll rule out everything else and just talk about finances and find the one strength, find the one weakness, and then do an opposite of that weakness and build from there, and see what you do. And it might not come up with anything. And then you go back and say, is there another weakness? Yeah, there's another weakness. Let's try that one out.
It's interesting because Graham's done exactly that. He had this really cool focus. He actually wrote a paper on it, and he focused in on the finance side of things and really looked at what was some of the connections and some of the dilemmas and conflicts that were in it. Do you use current reality trees at all? This is completely off topic. Well, it's not, but it's the same, because that's kind of, when you have lots and lots of problems, it's about actually strategically looking at all of the problems. Yeah,
all your undesirable effects.
System.
The current reality and future reality trees is not widely taught in my world. That the way I view it, I mean, don't boo me off the stage here, but it was really Eli's description of root cause analysis. And we teach about 10 or 15 different techniques on root cause analysis. That would just be adding another root cause analysis tool to an already fat pot of root. And it is a complex root cause analysis way. But what I have began using in my common speak now is I will ask the if and then scenario. I will say, well, if this happens and this other thing happens, okay, so if that happens, okay, cool, then this happens. So to use it actively, no, but I use it passively when I'm kind of probing people for questions, coaching the problems that they know are they're in their head, out of their head. I'll ask if and thens often.
Yeah, that kind of answers the question around the T1 and T2. So how do you decide which improvement to do? Well, actually, we don't use the conflict cloud for that. We use a root cause analysis. But when we get down into the deeper stuff and the more detailed, then SWOT and the root cause, and the conflict cloud then are the tools to use to get more detail. That's really nice. Really nice.
Right.
Okay. Have we got any other? We've got a whole lot of comments there. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else there that we could or we could wrap up. Actually, I got a question for you, Chris. What will we talk about next time you come on here? So this is, I think, known as the assumptive close, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
It's just a matter of time before something else percolates and I'm off to something else. I don't stay idle for long. So.
Yeah. Okay, we'll do it. I'd love to talk about the change management.
There was a question from someone asking if perhaps another session on how you combine ToC with LLR or
Lean Six Sigma.
Lean Six. Okay.
Yeah.
So someone's asked how you combine those two. So perhaps that's
they mold very well together. I do an entire lecture on theory of constraints is about focusing on a specific problem, where Lean and Six Sigma is focusing on the entire elephant. So if you think of an entire process as the elephant, theory of constraint says, well, the only thing wrong with the elephant is the hurt foot. So I'm going to focus on fixing the hurt foot, but it's also a part of the entire elephant. How does that affect the entire elephant? And the Toyota production system didn't shy away from that. If you look at Muda, Mura, and Muri, they talk about unevenness and overburdenedness and level loading. That's all the terms are the same in some aspect. You gotta think about it a little differently. Clark, you mentioned change management. I do an entire lecture on change management, on a process, a organization, and how change affects individuals. I go into some psychiatry on that kind of stuff.
Okay, that'd be really cool. So
I'm totally in for that conversation.
I have got Alan Barnard. Where are you, Alan? Do you want to come on? Because you've got some.
Sure. Hi, Carl. Hi, Chris. Hi, everyone.
There we go. Hello.
It's fascinating discussion. If I can share my screen, right? So I can quickly do a diagram. If can everybody see the white screen?
Oh yeah.
Yes, thanks.
So interesting. I mentioned our Harmony Decision Maker app. It's a free app that you can download from all the app stores. We've got about 15,000 downloads, and we were just last week actually studying what are the main usages of the app. And SWOT came up as one of the top 5s. And the second one that came up as one of the top 5s was being able to understand or prepare how to sell your product or service, or how to sell a change in an organization. So really relevant discussion. But the basic idea is you've got some kind of problem, right? That's putting pressure on you to make a change. So somebody is unhappy. It's putting some kind of pressure to make a change.
Mm-hmm.
And this is in direct conflict with the status quo of not making the change.
Yeah.
So I'm drawing this in blue because this is the color that we use. We even teach this at schools. We recently had an Odyssey program. The youngest participants were 10 years old. So we teach them, this is the cloud part of our dilemma. It's blue, right? I'll see if I can change. I don't know if I can change my color. Yeah, I can. So above these boxes are simply the pros of each of these. Right.
Yep.
And below these boxes are simply the cons.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So this is simple because it's upside and downside.
That's right.
And we also map onto this the change matrix cloud, because that analogy, that storyline is such a useful analogy. I remember teaching it at Cisco and was a little bit horrified in 2002 when it's like, what are they going to do with mermaid and pot of gold? Because it just becomes a common language. So you've got your alligator here, right? Which is the negative of not changing. That's the thing that's not going to go away. You have it, but you don't want it. You have crutches here, which is the downside of having to climb up that mountain, all the effort, the cost, the risk of falling down. Sorry, my handwriting is terrible with this thing. And then above the line, I have the pot of gold, of course, which is the prize of climbing up the mountain. And then I have my mermaid here, which is the thing that's at the base of the mountain that I want, but I don't want to give up, right? So when you're mapping SWOT onto this, it's very simple, because on the right-hand side is current.
Yep.
On the left-hand side is future. So when you're thinking about what is current, my strengths is the current positives of my status quo.
That's right.
The opportunities is the predicted positives if I was willing to make this change. And then I have the downside part to it, which is what is the threat that can happen if I make this change? And what is the weakness of the current status quo? So that's kind of how our users are mapping. I presented this, I think, back in 2011 or 2012 at ToC ICO conferences quickly. But as Chris was also mentioning, one of the problems that we see why customers are using it is that they do a SWOT analysis, and for each strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat, there's a task that's generated, right? How do we keep the strengths? How do we get rid of the weaknesses? How do we capitalize opportunities while preventing the threats? Each of those generate tasks. But these are all assumptions. So in the next step of our pro-con cloud method, so this is basically step one, just what's the problem and why it's important. Then what's my conflict and what's the unique pros and cons of each of these. Is the next step of the process is to explore 4 new options that you previously didn't consider. And essentially what we want to do is to resolve this conflict with a win-win. And there's the four options is very simple. It says, the first one is, why is change not viable? Right? Why is that not a viable option for me? Whether it's, to do virtual schooling or whether to implement this new technology. Why is it not a viable option yet? Because it's going to cause me to give up the strength of the mermaid. And it's going to cause me to have to live with the crutches, right? So our first option is, we call it change plus plus. What can I add to the change that I don't have to give up the mermaid? What can I add to the change so I don't have to incur the effort or the cost or the risk? And that's my first option. That's a new option. The second option is to say, look, you have to be objective. So let's think about the not change. This could be maybe implement SAP versus keep the legacy system. I call that not change plus plus. So what can I add to my legacy system that I don't have to give up the positives or the opportunities that I thought was unique to the change? What can I add? And then what can I add to get rid of the alligators, the users, moaning about the current legacy system? So now I have a second option. The third option says, what if the way to solve it is not change or not change, but when to change and when not? So I call that when and when not, when plus when not. It's just to say, what's the condition? That if that happened, it would be very easy to decide whether to change or not to change. And then the last one is, I call another change. That says, now that you know what the positives is that you want to keep and gain, and you know what the negatives are, the cons that you don't want to keep and gain, can you think of another change that has nothing to do with these two things conceptually that can give you that? And in that way, you've generated basically four new options that the user can then select on. And that goes back to the criteria that we teach, which is similar to what Chris shared, is to say, each of these will leave you better off than before, right? But how do you pick? Is you want to exercise that option, make that change that has a big upside if it really works, and a small downside if it doesn't. You want to stay.
This is almost an entire. I think we actually do need to have a conversation about actually, because this is really cool stuff. This is really, really cool stuff.
Yeah, sorry, it went on a little bit too long, but that's basically just quickly another way of just mapping SWOT onto this. Yeah. By resolving the conflict, you're in the process of challenging assumptions, etc.
The reason I'm saying is because I think like this advanced stuff, I know that there are a bunch of people who do follow us that would be really interested in this advanced stuff. And I can tell that because there are still some people hanging out still now after the webinar. So I think it would be really cool to have a conversation about maybe getting into a little bit more depth. Because even when I'm pretty good with my conflict clouds and ToC, and I did start to get a little bit lost. I was kind of going, hang on a minute, I need to try and get my head around this because it's a slightly different way of thinking. But I really love it. I have a question, which is for another time, but that box down the bottom left, which is the crutches, and the connection with the threats, and then thinking about Chris's SWOT analysis being the threats, the assumption is the threat, and the assumption of the crutches. And I'm really interested in that space and in that little corner down the bottom there. But that's, as I said, that's for another time.
Yeah, so basically what happens is we talked about compromises, right? As the person that wants to make the change, they're thinking mainly about these two. The one that's resisting the change are thinking mainly about these two. And that's why you have a conflict. So there's always a benefit of just mapping it out so both sides can see the whole cloud. And then to say, okay, let's explore that. There must be simple ways of resolving it. Let's go through these four options.
That's nice.
Alan, can we convince you to come back?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to, yes.
Can we have the Alan Barnard show next up? You'd already agreed to a talk for me about a year ago until COVID came along. So why don't we revive that? If we could get you back, that would be really cool because your work is it is advanced, but it's not advanced. And what I mean is that the most
kids, right. That was my ultimate test: is can you have kids use this tool? And that's why we created an app, right? They use it to say, I'm being bullied at school. What the hell do I do? Or just fallen pregnant. What do I do? I can't decide what to go and study. So that was our ultimate test.
So you've taken it beyond complicated to simple, and trying to sum it up here is why don't we do you justice? We'll get you back and we'll have a decent session. In the meantime, Philip has popped a link to Goldratt Research Labs on the in the chat there. You can all go have a look at it. It's just wonderful stuff. Vicky Mabin teaches this, or she's just retired actually, but she teaches your stuff at Vic Uni, and I taught her stuff. I took some of her classes and I taught it as well. So if we can do anything to get more people doing this, it's actually really easy, simple stuff because you've done all the thinking. So we'll get you, you'll be one of our upcoming speakers if you don't mind.
Awesome. And that's, I mean, I'd love to invite everybody to our app is free. You know, it's on all the mobile app stores. Just search for Harmony Decision Maker. And there's also a community library where people are sharing their decisions. We've got hundreds in there. And it's great to be able, you can see where they are in the process, step 1 to 5, but also in the implementation and what they've learned, so we can learn from each other. So I'd love to invite people to download the app and give us your feedback. Cool.
Okay, so we'll get you back. That would be awesome. It's I think one of those great contributions to society, make the world a better place. In the meantime, let's wrap up now. Let's see if we could we all go on just gallery view and just say thank you to Chris. Thumbs up to Chris. Would be really nice.
Thanks very much. Really appreciate it.
It was absolutely brilliant. And thank you for everyone for turning it up. It's just so much richer when we get the comments and we can actually look and see you all enjoying this. It actually makes it worth our while doing this. So yeah, if there's anything that you think you'd like to hear more about, or if you'd like to contribute or anything like that, just give us a yell. We're just trying to share this stuff because it's all just it's just so wonderful. And we'll get Chris back at some stage and Alan back, and we'll have Alan Larson shortly. And coming up soon, I would like to do my international book launch for Corkscrew Solutions, because I now actually have a vaguely professional looking cover coming up, and it's going to be featured this week in a very big newsletter that will go out. So it's got it should be, I think, shooting up the charts in Amazon next week. So it's done well so far. So I'd love for all of you to join in and just maybe come back and revisit that for maybe a 15-minute book launch, but sometime in the future. So let's do the 3, 2, 1, and end meeting for all. Goodbye.